Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Reservation, a podcast of three native brothers. I'm Mal.
I'm El.
And I'm the Son of Picasso.
Here coming live right at your face, in your ear holes, and, through
Just those two.
the internet.
Just those two holes.
those two holes. We don't want.
Let's hope.
We don't want any trouble. Please don't call the police. I mean, we're not Matthew.
We're unfiltered.
We're not Matthew McConaughey. We're not going to try to, hang out with your teenage children.
What?
Hey, let's not go besmirching the very nice name of Matthew McConaughey.
I mean, he's all right.
Exactly. Cool. All right, Mal, what are we talking about today, my friend?
So today, I think for our first episode, if this is really truly our first episode, because I mean, what did we do last time? We recorded and realized that I cannot keep my mind on one topic. Like, maybe I have ADHD, but sorry, I've gone on a tangent again. Already, and we barely started. Anyways,
That was my fault. I like to make it work for me when I ADHD out.
ADHD. Ew. Keep that to yourself. Keep that ADHD to yourself. So I guess what we're going to talk about
Wait, maybe we should talk about what this is.
Good start.
I believe you have the information.
Where did we get the name Off the Reservation?
Off the Reservation. Well, I guess the concept, which is funny because I wasn't exactly in the room for the naming of it, but I feel like the idea is that we are all three brothers that we're the first generation born off the reservation. We're all Native American. I, Mal, am Navajo and Kiowa. And a few other things thrown in there for a little extra spice. Like Pueblo.
Yeah, we're part Pueblo and
You-
Delaware and
French, Irish, Spanish.
yeah,
We're like 31 flavors.
of Indian.
We're 31 flavors of awesome. And
Well, so originally, right, the term Off the Reservation it kind of came out of a derogatory term, right? In that sense that it was literally meaning to leave somewhere that you weren't supposed to be leaving.
Yeah, you were leaving confinement.
And so over the years, it's become a term that said, I think it's even in question now if people should be using it because it's in reference, like you said, of obviously,
subjugation.
of being put into a reservation
And being put in your place.
Yeah,
or I mean, essentially, it's a large land mass of a prison. It's a big prison that they put Native Americans to make sure that they killed them off.
And so the term to go off the reservation was, like you said, it's a derogatory term to leave an Indian reservation to which one was restricted. That's from Wiktionary, which is obviously very reliable.
Yeah.
But for our purposes and ideas, we all grew up away from the reservation. We grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're stone's throw from
Reservations.
plenty of
all around.
reservations
Yeah.
and pueblos around.
Sandia Pueblo, Isleta Pueblo, Sia Pueblo.
Laguna. Yeah.
But for the most part, we grew up in
We grew up in the city.
Albuquerque.
Yeah. And that for us is different. That experience for us is a little bit different being native people growing up in a city away from your roots in that sense, So
Well, and our grandparents, our parents, all grew up on some kind of government
Installation, whether
installation.
it was a military base or the actual real reservation or even overseas. We have uncles who were born in Germany because our grandfather was serving in the armed forces.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that we're a part of that generation that is making headway, we're the first of our kind to in essence have a 9-to-5, to have a mortgage, to have things that our ancestors that were in prison that we're never able to even have. And so, making that headway is one of those things where you're like, wow, we're the first to do some of these things. We're the first almost to be on the moon, sort of, And
Well, it's a privilege, yeah, for sure, right? And you almost feel like I got to do something with it,
Yeah,
like I don't want to just waste it.
Because it's a responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy when you look at the fact, like I don't know if it was because we all grew up like within a time span of like, you guys are a little younger than me by like 7 to 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, I was the only Indian in school, like for a lot of my childhood, besides my cousin who I also went to school with, you know what I mean? And that
and he doesn't really even count.
So, growing up and experiencing that, it really cemented the idea of you were different, and it made you re-examine how you carried yourself in normal society, because a lot of times you were scrutinized, like, oh, like you're native,
You're a representation of your people, and not just yourself.
And sometimes,
your family.
in essence, you didn't ask for that role. You didn't ask for that position. You didn't ask to be born. You were just born, And so,
the great creator decided to make me and bless me as a Native American, and it's great.
And so, you think about things like that, and they shape who you are as a person now. And so, as we're all growing up and having kids, and they're the second generation to be born off the reservation, it's really makes you rethink your life and your childhood,
Well, re-examine like all the things that you've experienced. For me growing up, because like I'm in the between of you two, Son of
Age-wise.
Picasso, yeah.
And literally,
you're literally sitting in between us.
Yeah.
But growing up, like, I grew up in a weird in between of like people respecting and revering Native Americans and people being like, this is, it's cool. But for me specifically, like, I grew up with long hair, and that was like the big identifier for me, is like having long hair growing up. And obviously I'm darker than most of the other kids, and in that sense, like, I got mistaken a lot of the times for being Hispanic. We live in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah, there's a predominant Hispanic community here.
Yeah.
And especially when you have short hair, sometimes you're able, like, I don't know, I guess. Let me rethink about what I'm saying here.
Yeah, no, I don't know how many times people, they
they
Spanish
start
people
speaking
come
Spanish
up,
to
and you're
you.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they think that you're
Donde
being
está la biblioteca?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's...
Well, I know for me, like, growing up, like, when you grow up, I think, as a native in the city, and you're not with other natives that are growing up on the reservations or just back home, you know what I mean? Like, you miss out on stuff, you know what I mean? You miss out on some of the experience, that helps shape native people,
Well, I also think, though, that the struggle is a lot more in your face off the reservation, because you're faced with other things that they're not faced with there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, it's
If
different.
that makes any sense.
Yeah. Different experiences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really neat about being a native in the city, is that all of our experiences are completely different,
Definitely.
My generation, when I was growing up, the part of town that we lived in was called the war zone, and as you were growing up, our family made a better life for themselves, and you grew up in a completely different part of town than where I grew up in,
Yeah.
And so it's what was I saying?
It definitely is one of those things that definitely shapes your idea of what it was like. Because for you, I can't imagine our parents ever letting you wander around the streets, let alone at night.
Oh, especially in the neighborhood we lived in. Like that was not an option.
Was that neighborhood always that way when you guys, for as long as you know, it was always like that? Or was there ever a point
so
where...
a lot of people don't know this, but the way Albuquerque was carved up during that time was it was controlled by the cartel. So a lot of these cartels operated in those blocks that called the war zone, and so that's why it was the murder capital of the Southwest for such a long time. And so as they went to gentrify things, they put up all these roadblocks and made things one ways, and pretty much just made the area just uninhabitable for them. That slowed down maybe in the early 2000s. And so as that changed, the type of people that moved in there changed to lower income families, things kind of slowed down, and which is good, but the problems picked up and went somewhere else. So
yeah. Well, so being native and growing up in the city, or at least for myself, I always found myself unsure of where I sat almost in society, because like you said, there wasn't a whole lot of other native kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there was when I grew up, but I always felt like they had something I didn't, you know,
and
they grew up with families. They spoke the language, their family spoke the language at home. And we didn't have that. My parents don't.
See, that's where you and I share something in common, because I really identified myself growing up by the sports I played. I loved to play football, and I played football my whole younger years of being on this planet, and and that is something that I was able to really sink my teeth into as a kid, and really get involved in, because you got that camaraderie, and you weren't necessarily different on the football field. It was more settled by strength and what you could do versus
the way you looked.
So it was easier.
You all look the same,
and then you're on a team too, so it created a different environment. And so I think that's something that we share in common.
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty thankful for sports in that sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it helps shape us I think it's helped shape at least myself, and probably maybe for you too, like you just said, working as a team and understanding what that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not all going to be all-stars, but to get that win, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's something, and that's a different topic for another time. But
well, definitely. I mean,
but you look at it though, across the other side of the board, those type of things aren't even afforded to Native youth on the reservation. There's no Yaffle football league out there. There's basketball, which is amazing, but how many people are on a basketball team? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, how many players are on a basketball team?
And how many even have the financial freedom to be able to try to invest in the equipment to even do something like that?
Shorts,
and
uniform.
So we're definitely privileged in that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there were some areas. Well, like you said, it's different.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, at the same time, though, when I say privilege, let me explain to you. When we say privilege, it wasn't like our parents were just like, "Oh, let me just get the money out and do it."
Oh no.
Our parents had to go and save 5 different paychecks up and save over 5 months in order to be able to afford these things for us, because we were by no means people of means. You know what I mean?
No. And just because we were born off the reservation doesn't mean that our parents were rolling in the dough.
No, by no means. Our father was a full-time artist, and our mom pretty much was his co-artist and helped him through it. Your dad
supported.
Yeah, my dad worked all over the place. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, when you think of it like that, we are quite literally grew up living hand to mouth. And so, that level of poverty also transforms you as a youth, And so now that we're all growing up into adults, that idea of willing to work as hard as you can, is definitely is relevant in us, because I see how successful we all are as people. There's no sense of, let me just lay here and somebody's going to save us. There's an idea of I am going to work harder than the next person to get out of this situation.
Yeah. It's the privilege of opportunity. I mean, because we grew up in the city, because there's so many jobs just around the corner, you have the ability to go, okay, I'm going to go work at Walmart. I'm going to go work at I don't know, the gas station. You're going to start doing these jobs. And if you have the drive, you have the desire, you can make it bigger. I mean, you can work at a hotel, you can work at all these things. And because you're in the city, you don't have that isolation of, I mean, when I think of the reservation, I think of like Window Rock. Like, you go to Window Rock, it's right on the border between New Mexico and Arizona, and they have a Taco Bell, a KFC, and I think those are like the same building. Maybe a Church's Chicken, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple of things.
Just minimum wage jobs.
And minimum wage jobs. And like, what are you going to do? You're going to eventually like become the manager of those establishments. How many managers can they have in...
Yeah, definitely limited just in the opportunities that afforded to them, right? I mean...
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And when I think of like the reservation as itself, like for you to really make a good to one of the opportunities you have to make an income is becoming an artist. And so a lot of the times in the restaurants, like in Gallup, if you go miles into New Mexico from Window Rock, you get to Gallup, and in Gallup, you go along any of the if you go into any of the restaurants along the highway there, I mean, you pass through Gallup to go into California. You go through there, you stop and eat. You'll see grandmothers and other people walking around trying to sell you earrings made out of, silver, sterling silver, nickel silver, those kinds of things, and beading stuff. And so the opportunities to go in to do something, to pursue a career in a different path than you would on the reservation is much more. Yeah.
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 You said it all, bro.
You said it all, man. You said it all.
Gosh, Forrest Gump was funny.
Man, just a little side story. I was thinking back of our childhood, and like, do you guys remember growing up at Taos, like with everybody there in front of the home? And like, that was just crazy to think about the history of us being all in front of that house. How many of our generation stood in front of that house and like played, ate, and it's crazy to think about that we ourselves are descendants of those people. You know what I mean? That itself is amazing.
I think the cool thing about it is the fact that, like, even though we were born off the reservation, we all grew up off the reservation. I mean, our grandparents live in Albuquerque as well. We still, because we have our ties back to the reservation, it meant that we were able to like transverse the two. And
what I want to say first off is, just because you're born on the reservation or off the reservation, that doesn't prove how much of a native you are. Yeah. That just shows where you were born,
It's just a location.
And, at least that's how I always felt about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like, that controversial argument is a big
I'm by no means saying that living on the reservation is substandard. What I'm saying is that, yes, there is beauty on the reservation, because as Native people, are able to find the beauty in anything, right?
Yeah. And
finding that beauty there, let's see, what am I trying to say?
I mean, honestly, I think that one of the bigger misconceptions about the reservation is the fact that it's like some kind of, like I said earlier, that it's a prison, but at the same time, it's also partially ancestral lands. Like, our grandparents did grow up on certain sections of the land, but at the same time, like, for the Navajo side, they had a summer house and a winter house. And so they take their sheep, move them up the hill, live in the higher elevation during the summer, feed their sheep. Once the winter was coming in, they'd move their sheep down to lower elevation to survive the winter and last through the winter. But there wasn't any borders, there wasn't any fences. and the land wasn't ours. It wasn't, ours in the sense that you dig your hands into it and grit your teeth and hold on to it, but it was ours in the sense that it was everyone's. It was the people's land. And the people, if you look at a lot of Native American names and ideas, they're identifying their name that they're identified as are generally mean the people.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that I've always, having my dad being my dad, I always looked at it as, he would always explain it to me like this, like the fact that we're native blood, the whole continental United States belongs to Native Americans. So even if you live in the city, if you live at the top of a mountaintop, if you live in South America, North America, Canada, it's all Indian land. It's all ancestrally ours as a people group. It doesn't matter where you live. And the fact is, getting off the reservation is one step to getting that birthright back to us. It's like, if we don't do that, then society's just going to continue to go on as it is, and we're going to live off of there, and they're going to live there, and there's going to be this giant
separation.
Yeah, well, not just that, but there's going to be this giant level of unfairness, and that's the part where I was talking about a few weeks ago about reparations. Is closing that gap is part of making Native people whole again. It's like the idea of insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Like, insurance isn't necessarily to bring you above what you had, right, and like get you something better than what you had, but it's just to make you whole again. Like, how is that not? I guess what I'm saying is, how is that not taken place yet? How is 500 years, 600 years, however long that we've dealt with this issue of substandard inhuman living? How long is that going to take? How many generations are going to be like, in the ground before they're like, okay, yeah, we probably owe you this,
Hey, so we were wrong. Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, that's where it takes people like, some of our activists that are out there. You know what I mean? But it takes more. It takes more than that. It takes everybody.
And it takes allies. And I think that's what's been especially inspiring these last few years is the amount of allies that Native Americans have gained outside of the tribes. And I mean,
Anglo people are coming a lot more socially aware. Yeah. And they're not their parents. You know what I mean? Their concept of society isn't the same. And so in one sense, it's like we can't hold them accountable for how their ancestors acted. But in the same sense, they also need to understand, like, look, this is how your ancestors acted. You have this level up in society that we don't have. Your job as having this responsibility is to close the gap, like it's our job to make sure that the next generation has a proper maintained earth to inherit. You know what I mean? Like, pollution wise, like if we don't step up and do something, then it's just going to continue on and get worse,
Well, and along that same line, so one of the things that you had said earlier is that we don't really speak our language. And I think that's part of one of the things of growing up in the city that we've kind of missed out on is, one, I don't know my language well enough to even communicate with anyone in my language.
For me, even introduce myself in the language. You know what I mean? Like, I can't. Yeah.
And I mean, like, I know words like if I say yate, I'm saying hi. But I mean, like, to full on be able to say, hi, my name is Malachi. These are my clans. I know my clans. But, like, I don't know how to go on beyond that. I can tell you, like, hey, in English, like, hey, these are my clans. And then go on from there. But along those same lines is the fact that I don't know much about our ceremonies. I don't know too much about
I It's interesting that you bring that up because we as a whole entire population of Native people have been through the Holocaust, and none of our ceremonies are intact. We've filled in bits and pieces of what, the generation before us taught us, but the true root core of being a Native, was lost way before any of our generation ever came around, before their generation came around, before their generation came around. It's like we've been waiting for everything to settle, and it's like, do you guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or
What it's like, kind of like what is a true Native?
Yeah,
like it's hard. It's really not like an answer you can just
give out there.
Have because it's been so not diluted, but mixed over the years, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, like so much has been added, taken away.
We've
So
lost
who's
so
to say
much.
what is what?
Yeah.
Well, and the other along the same lines, like even before Europeans had made it into this country, there was a mixing of Native Americans even before that. Because if you go, you'll find that Navajos who were Navajo for generations had their grandmother who was an Apache, or their grandmother who was a Kiowa, or somebody along the same lines was a different tribe at some point. And whenever that happens, it can, if you only adhere to a certain idea, a certain principle, you'll eventually stagnate and lose the purpose of it. And so therefore, the Pueblos had to bring in something new from like the Navajos, and the Navajos had to bring in something new. And that's why you see, like, in a lot of ways, all these tribes have somewhat similar but different,
or different designs, different customs. Yeah.
And that's why
but they're similar.
They're similar but different.
Same but different.
Same but different.
I know for me growing up though, like in the city, there was a stark difference between just like I was saying before, like I didn't know my place. You know what I mean? I didn't know where I fit in with everybody. I had friends who were like had houses. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in a mobile home, not like we were literally moving our home anywhere, but just like the regular like a trailer.
Speaking real to that, like I grew up using my grandma's address so I could go to a nice school.
Yes,
we
all three of us did. APS don't.
So like we were living in like the worst neighborhood.
Yeah,
and so we would show up to the nice school. And that's actually how I got into painting, was because I was around all these white kids that had a ton of money. And like here I was with my bummy shoes, bummy clothes. But that's
not that our parents didn't take care of us.
Right?
Yeah,
our parents provide the best.
You wore everything you had until it was like could not be worn anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But going to school somewhere else, you know what I mean?
And like taking 30 minutes to get to school versus the kid who just gets to walk out the door with
I always wanted to walk out to school.
That was the dream,
And like I remember my friends like having us over to go to their house and thinking, oh, this would be so cool if my friends got to come to my house.
And then you couldn't because
nobody knew I lived there.
And then if they did find out, and if the school found out, then they'd send you off to somewhere else, or have you go through the process of trying to transfer in, and then you have to prove all these things. It was just a lot easier.
I had like 15 kids listening to that address.
Oh man!
Hey man, you got to work the system.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was literally all because your parents wanted the best for you.
In the city, being in the city is learning how
to work the system.
Because I don't want to say that because that sounds so bad.
No.
But in the same sense. It's like if you don't learn your environment, then we are all like I've been telling us, like we are quite literally products of our environment.
Oh, you got to adapt to survive.
And taking care of yourself, doing what you can to take care of yourself, and your family. Yeah. Well, because if you were to go to the schools that we were like in the area of like who knows where I would have ended up, to be honest.
So here's a crazy story. All of the people that grew up in my block are either dead or in jail. Like that's facts. The people that I grew up next to.
Yeah.
Right?
Except for Al.
Yeah, except for him, and he became a cop, which tells you is he a
Got
criminal?
two ends of the
Well, he moved out.
you got two ends of the spectrum there. Yeah. You either become a cop or you end up in jail. But yeah, no, it's crazy, right? To think about that.
Yeah.
Isn't that a movie? My best friend became a cop and I'm a criminal.
That's The Departed, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, there you go. Are you a cop?
He didn't look at me. He's
a cop.
He's a cop. They don't look at you. They're a cop. But yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Sorry.
But yeah, for me, like it was like not knowing exactly where I fit in because like you said, I wasn't the kid who like had a house nearby the school,
And
right?
see,
That got to walk to school.
That's
going to friends'
interesting,
houses. Man, it was like, man, this is like you have a backyard.
Think of this. How old were you at that age? Like, where you really realized that?
Maybe
10, 11?
Yeah, whatever, like 4th and 5th grade
See,
were. When I
that's
was actually
where
going
your
to people's
dual
houses.
consciousness kicked in, where you realized that you weren't like white society. Do you know what I mean? And that's the burden that every native living off the reservation lives with, is this idea of you realize that you're native, but yet you still operate inside a society that's catering to non-natives.
Yeah.
And it's enough to drive you crazy.
That is an excellent topic to go to, which brings us to our next topic. Well, first we're going to have a little bit of an advertisement.
Ooh, nice.
Going to kick it off, throw it out. We want to be able to highlight native artists, and so we'll be right back after this quick break.
All right, so we're back after those lovely advertisements, and shout out to our featured artists this week. Let's see. I think one of the topics we were kind of like bordering on earlier was the idea of realizing that we were different. Like when we realized
How did you put it? What was that term you used?
Otherness. When we realized
how would you
our
describe the otherness? What does that mean?
Otherness is the idea of you don't fit into normal society, that something is different. And I mean, otherness is like can reach out to so many different people, and people do feel otherness on some level. But when the entire society that you live in is kind of opposite the way you are, I feel that is like a even deeper, even bigger, even more dense otherness than just feeling like your parents don't understand you, and it's not a phase, mom. Emo is for life.
It's not just teen angst.
Yeah, it's not just teen angst, and I think that's the true essence of otherness is. Yeah, you can have your angst, you can have your phases that you go through, but if it's the otherness that you felt since the day you were born all the way up until you die, that is true, heavy, dense, unadulterated, full on in your face otherness. And I mean, for Native Americans, honestly, otherness is huge, because I believe that in our society, it was built on this idea that Native Americans were the enemy. And I believe that's partially from the beginning of the establishment of the United States, because in order to get the land that the government wanted, they had okay, so let me explain. There's an idea that when you start a campaign against a people, you have to create them and mark them as the enemy. And in order to mark them as the enemy, you have to brand them different terms, such as like Nazis are
terrorists,
are Nazis. You derogatory names, and mostly it's still with derogatory names. So like, for Native Americans, one of them would be like redskin, savage. I don't know. I mean, and different things. So like, it could even be chief. And
so just any of the main NFL teams.
Yeah,
So most sports teams. No, but yeah, I know what you mean.
And growing up in this society, you're inundated with these terms like red man, savage. I mean, we look back at the most controversial one recently was the Peter Pan, and how in the middle of Peter Pan they get captured and there's Tiger Lily, and then they have that whole entire song called "What Makes the Red Man Red," and I mean, it's so controversial nowadays, but when it came out, like,
it was Disney.
It was Disney, and it was
just
like
good
the
family
world.
Fun.
Yeah, a good family fun film.
Yeah.
But as a Native American, like seeing that as a child and realizing, like, you don't see natives in media and in movies other than like in a John Wayne Western falling off a horse. And so seeing that and you like recognize like, ooh, Tiger Lily. Oh, all the Indians in this movie, I feel connection to them. And then you go to school and you eventually experience Thanksgiving at school. And it's around that time when you suddenly start realizing, I'm not like the other kids in my class. Like,
well, it starts beyond that because teachers start to talk about pioneers and settlers, and they start to talk about, oh, our ancestors did this and our ancestors did that. And one of the first times I realized I was different, I raised my hand up and I was like, well, let's be correct here. Your ancestors did that. Your ancestors did that. My ancestors did this. Mm-hmm. And it was like one of those record moments where like the record screeches. And she looked at me and she goes, oh yeah, I guess you are right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, we've all had those moments in our lives where we know we're different, but then there's things that are just like a cold, like bucket of water thrown on you. Like, you're different. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And it's like, and we all have that, right? At some point, I think, that might be a generalization, but I think most kids, especially natives, at some point you realize,
see, it's interesting though, because we're in an interesting position, right? We're natives and we live in the inner city, but there's also what they call POC, people of color, who are also minorities living in the same position that we're living in. So our plight is just like mirrored just like them. You know what I mean? And so we've all had those moments of where we're all faced with either we're different economically, we're different where we live, we're different because of what we eat, we're different because of the color of skin we have, we're different because our parents are different colors, we're different because our parents make different types of income. We're all faced with that. And there's when those moments happen, you're faced with the idea of like, whoa, this is either a good thing or it's a bad thing. You know?
Yeah. Well, then you feel different. You start feeling different. You start noticing different things. You know what I mean? Yeah. The way other people's families are, their relationship with their parents, like your friends, you're like, oh, that's not how, like, it feels so like almost like sterile in your house. You know what I mean? Like the way they interact with their parents. And even like for me, the first time going to a friend's house and like it was, an Anglo friend, and they have this nice house and their parents almost look at you like, my kid is a friend of yours. Who are you? And you almost feel like, I don't know. I guess I go as far as to say you almost feel lesser, than people, sometimes, because
here you are in the same sense, where you're from, what you see every day, and then you go into these huge homes and you're like, whoa, and they see the look on your face of like, I've never seen a home like this before.
It's like,
How
man,
many
I should
TVs
have
did
worn
you
my
have?"
good jeans.
I had a friend. I've always wanted a house with a garage because so many good things can happen in a garage. You know what I mean? Like
garage band.
Yeah, like other than parking your car in there. You know what I mean? Like we play
Games.
jamming out games. But,
Apple starter in the garage.
yeah, you know what I mean? And so, anyways, I remember the first time I went to a friend's house, and his family had a garage. He had a hoop cemented into the driveway.
Oh my gosh,
I was like,
in-ground hoop?
Yeah, I was like, that's awesome. And like his dad put some time into it because it was like extendable. You know what I mean? So we could like dunk on it.
Your dad loves you.
And so I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then in the garage they had a refrigerator that they just always stocked with Gatorades.
Who's your friend?
And yeah, I know, right?
So cool.
And so I was like, this is amazing, So he's like, oh yeah, do you guys want a Gatorade? I was like, oh sure.
Wait, you have food in your fridge?
And so like we hung out at his house, and at some point I think his parents got tired of us being there because they knew that we were like, they're coming in here drinking all my Gatorades, freaking dunking on our hoops, you know what I mean? Yeah. And at some point you just feel like, oh, like I don't think they want me here. You know what I mean?
I'm welcome.
And it feels like, you just feel like, dude, it just feel weird,
Well, that's what you get for having the cool house, like like if you're gonna have a house with a hoop, a basketball hoop,
you better expect the neighborhood kids are coming over.
Yeah, you can't just put a hoop in the ground and not expect a kid to want to use it.
Yeah,
have a fridge full of Gatorades and not expect the kids to drink them. Come on,
it's like having a.
But that's what I mean. Like even in their environments, the way they like talk to their family, it was weird. It was weird. It was like, oh, you guys aren't like.
You can talk back.
No.
Not die.
Well, yeah, it was kind of like that, But everything, the interactions just felt so. I don't know.
It felt like you were watching like a weird sitcom.
There was like no warmth. You know what I mean? It wasn't like like the way like we interact with our families, and this is where it kind of comes back to it, right? Our family, growing up in our family, was like. Huge. We really took the aspect of family to like the next level in the sense of like we were together a lot, A lot.
I mean, every holiday. So we all grew up in church, and going to the church, we had like aunts and uncles everywhere, like heavily integrated into all the administrational positions in the church. So like going to church wasn't just like going to church, it was going to go hang out with your cousins.
I love this story. Let me tell the story. Do you remember going to Sizzler after church?
Oh, yeah.
With the entire family. Sizzler. And like we would take over like the entire restaurant. Yeah. Like there was more Indians in Sizzler than
it looked like we were in Gallup.
Yeah.
And we were all related. Like they would see us come in and they would just know, oh no, they're coming in here.
Well, it was like we moved, and like how like you reserve spaces in a restaurant for like a party. Like we didn't have to reserve a space in there, but we still got the room for the party room. Like
they were like, it's just easier if we put you all in one room.
I don't know if it was because maybe it was like safety in numbers or what, but like we would all go eat at the same restaurant, and like it was enjoyable at the same time. But I remember looking inward, and we're all eating, and then turning around and looking and seeing the whole restaurant looking at us like, where did they come from? Like because at that time, like we all, like, some of us had short hair, so we didn't look indigenous.
Yeah.
Like we had just we didn't fit their perception of being native. Like we didn't have buckskin and feathers on. Like we were literally just dressed like normal people. And so, like, we blew these people's minds just eating steak,
Yeah.
And, like, it's crazy because that happens to me all the time now. Like, I go into places and, like, I blow their minds just buying shoes or buying a TV, And it's like, golly, like, am I the first Indian to come through here?
Okay. Along that same line. Okay, so for anyone who's native and ever been native and grown up off the reservation in a city,
just say if you've ever been native.
If you've ever been native.
If you haven't, you gotta try it.
You can pick it up at the store. It's on sale.
I think Amazon right now you can get 2 for $3.
But going to Walmart in like Albuquerque, New Mexico is a whole other thing than going to Walmart out in Gallup.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
Growing up, like you go to Walmart, you see all kinds of different people, like they look at you, and it's that whole idea, like you go into a space, you're native, you have long hair, you don't look like everyone else, you may or may not have facial hair, and it may or may not be patching. I mean, I got, yeah, never mind. And so like you go to
I know that struggle.
we both are sitting in that struggle bus. But like you go to Walmart in Gallup and everyone looks the same. There's like dudes walking around with long hair, braided, unbraided, flowing in the wind, and you're like, "Oh man, this is going to be a special experience." And then you walk in and you're kind of like, nobody cares. and that's the feeling of like being a native from the city going off to the reservation and entering a place and not like causing a stir, getting a reaction. It's like the most like, I want to say, liberating feeling
of almost being anonymous.
Yeah. Like, because when you're native in the city,
unquote normal.
Yeah, because you know, a lot of times too, when you're native and you go into a store, it's not like you're like a celebrity. Like, oh, look at that Indian! Wow, can I have your autograph? It's, look at this brown person. We better watch them. Make sure they don't put anything in their jacket or their
giving
purse.
you that side eye of just
going
like,
to that's what I mean. Like going to Walmart, I could walk around Walmart and not worry about security following me.
And so that level of perception is amplified off the reservation. Like you not only do you know you're different, but like everybody's watching you, waiting for you to perpetrate. You know?
Yeah. Everybody reminds you that you're different with the way that they act. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's okay. So in a conjunction, or what is it? I don't know what the word is, but in the opposite way, being that we're native and we're artists at the same time, like we've grown up. Our father's been an artist. He's been painting
since the early 70s.
Yeah, since for a long time. We've been going to art shows pretty much our entire life, and therefore being a child and growing up as a native artist, therefore you want people to notice you. You want people to recognize you and go, "Hey, that's you're different. Let me go ahead and see what you're doing." And so I don't know. I mean, like for me, like I remember growing up and I had long hair, and since like I've never cut my hair my entire life. My hair's been long. It's generally braided. It used to be braided, looking fly with my long hair.
See, that's interesting because I've always had short hair my whole life.
Yeah.
And I always used to get questions about that. Like, why does your brother have short hair or long hair and you have short hair?
I'm still wondering.
And well, okay, so the way it kind of happened all is like my parents, when I was born, I had really long hair. Like I came out and boom, I had long hair. And so my parents were like, yeah, we can't cut that hair.
So it's just
out of like
convenience.
I don't have the heart.
I don't want to cut the hair all the time.
Just leave it. Yeah, and it just grew, and then eventually they braided it, and then eventually they taught me the ideas and the feeling behind it. And the idea is that a Native American man has his hair long because it's a sign of honor, of pride, of being who you are. And for me personally, as I got older, it became a sign of rebellion. Mm-hmm. Like, look, you can't control me. I'm not gonna go and conform to your ideas. But as a child, growing up with long hair, I got mistaken so many times for being a girl.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, you can attest to this.
I would stand up for you. I'd be like, "That's my little brother."
And it was always, most of the time. Well, don't want to say always, but most of the time, it was an elderly Anglo lady who would come up and go, "Oh, you're such a cute girl. Oh, I love your long hair. It's so pretty. oh, you take good care of it and it's so pretty. Your mom must have so much fun braiding your hair. And I'd be like, I'm a boy. And I, like as
I'm a man.
yeah, like as a young Native American man being mistaken for a girl at the time was like, no. You're not gonna. I'm gonna make myself as manly sounding as possible, and I mean those kind of interactions stick with you for a long time.
Oh, I could see that giving you a complex. Even my son has long hair. For those of you who don't know, and he gets called a little girl all the time. And I see him. It puts a fire in him because it's for one, it's emasculating, and he's a man's man, right? And so I don't know. It's hard. I feel for him. I have long hair now too. And one time we were all walking in a row, and like this guy at the store was like, "Oh, you ladies having a good day?" And I turned around, I looked at him, and he saw me, and he was like, "Oh, sorry, you just have pretty hair." And I was like, "So you're a man telling me I have pretty hair? I got you, bro."
Okay. Are you okay?
Yo, thanks. I shampoo and condition.
Head and Shoulders, Troy Polamalu.
Well, and so like, okay, so I like at an early age I was having those kinds of interactions.
You had long hair too, didn't you, El?
No.
Yeah,
you did. And
it wasn't like long, but it was shoulder length.
You
right?
you went through the skater phase.
Yeah, it went down to here. It wasn't that long.
I swore you had long hair.
No, I tried, and then
I could have sworn it was like at least to your shoulders at one point.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was trying to be a skater. Yeah,
man, I love skateboarding. Do you remember going skating all over Phoenix during the Herd Art show?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a lot.
That was fun, man. We went to that movie theater, skated down the road with that movie theater.
Man, the Life of an Artist kid is so much fun. Like, it's a blast. But
man, I was jealous of you guys. You guys like, like it was awesome when you guys took us on trips. Like, and I was always jealous of Shauna. She went with you guys a couple times to places.
Well, that's because Shauna was technical.
Shauna was working.
She read the manuals anyway.
It's so funny, man, because she still does. like if and my sister and her husband, they love playing board games. And I like board games, but I can't sit there and read all the rules and know exactly what you're supposed to do.
Like,
why?
But it's enjoyable to play with them because they do that. They read the rules. They know how it goes, and you're like, okay. And so you have someone else do it for you because it just gets so boring. But you need those people in the world,
They're very important. They're doctors now.
Indeed, yeah. Yes, they are.
They read the manuals.
I often look at our experience as Native males growing up in the city. Like, I can't imagine being a Native woman growing up in the city.
That'd
like,
be scary.
That's too much. Like, that's just crazy. Like, the amount of harassment and... I mean, I don't even know.
I mean, just in general, being a woman, you get harassed so much. In so many different ways, and
so if you're a man out there listening, be a better man.
Like be cool. Don't be a jerk.
As my daughter walks in and waves. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, she gave you that sign of approval there. She's like,
I approve of this message.
It's good.
But yeah, I mean,
yeah. So at some point, I think, right? You said, I mean, we were saying at some point, everybody experiences that there is something else. Maybe different, and whether that's the way the system, and when I mean the system, I mean like school system growing up, the way they teach you about history and American history, you realize that I wasn't on that side. Like our ancestors weren't on that American history side for a lot of it. You know what I mean? We were taken advantage of, but it's weird because you don't immediately connect with that until, like you said, you're put into the position of like, okay, we're gonna split up between pilgrims and Indians. Everybody get down. Yeah. Let's all make some headbands with feathers. And...
What is interesting is me and Mal were in interesting positions. Being our father was an artist, we were always culturally aware that we were Native, right?
Yeah.
It was honestly though, I didn't realize all of the white people around me that I was living around weren't Native. Do you get what I mean? It wasn't that I didn't think I was a native.
Right.
I thought they were all native with me, and their perception of life was a native view.
Well, you didn't have the idea that there was even a separation between you two.
Yeah, and that didn't happen until like that story I told you guys, where I was in school, and this little white boy was, talking trash to me, and I looked at him and I cussed back at him in Navajo, and he looked at me just like, what did he say? What?
What was it? You said.
I told him he eats chant, and like he looked at me and he was like, chant. What's chant? And he looked at all the other white boys standing around him and he goes, do you know what chant is? Do you know what chant is? And he looks at me and he goes, what's chant? And I looked at him and I said, it's you. You're chant.
Oh, jeez.
And so then he like turned around and went running towards the teacher and pulled on her dress and he goes, Miss such and such, Ben told me I'm chant. And this is a white teacher, right? She looks at me and she goes, Ben, what's chant? And like I looked and I was like, and I just played dumb, like, I didn't know. I was, little kid. So then I go home, right? And I see my dad and I'm like, Dad, I got into trouble today. I got to tell you right off the bat. He's like, Ben, what happened? And I said, this little white boy was picking on me. He cussed at me. So I told him he eats something bad. And he goes, eat something bad? Well, what did you tell him? And I felt so bad. I said, Dad, I cussed. And he goes, what? What did you say? And I said, I told him he eats chant. And like he laughed so hard and he goes, you told him he eats chant? And he goes, I said, yeah. And he looked at it and I said, he had no idea what I said to him. Like he didn't know what I told him. And he was just like even the teacher didn't know what I told him. And he looked at me and he goes, Ben, it's because we're Navajo. They don't speak Navajo. They're white. And I was like, what? And like at that point I felt like a little elevation. Like I felt like I was a part of a special club. You know what I mean? And so that idea of feeling different wasn't like, oh, different in a bad way. It was like, okay, now I got this secret handshake to this shit. You know what I mean? And so growing up, meeting other natives in the city, you would see them and
you give them the chant high.
Well, you knew that they were going through the same shit you were going through.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whether you had to say it or not say it, you could just see each other and be like, give each other the what's up nod.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's a little different now because more of us are getting off the reservation and white society is used to that now, used to seeing us in colonized spaces, right? And so, it's making it easier. Every person that comes off and gets off and inhabits colonized spaces, it makes it just easier for that transition to happen.
Just as a clarification, chant is a Navajo word, and it's not actually a bad word. It's not a curse word. It's the word for poop. And so it's not a curse word in the sense that like Navajos don't actually have any curse words in their language, but you can say like you eat chant and therefore it be turned into a curse. It's all about context and how you're using it. But yeah, just for anyone who's like, oh man, I learned a curse word in Navajo, I'm going to go use it. And you contextually, you can go and use it as a curse word, but it's not technically a curse word. Sorry. I like using the word chant.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think differently of me. It's not a curse.
I've been teaching it to my son when he's barely he's a little bit over a year, and I'm like, oh, you got chant? Okay, come on, let me go ahead and change your diaper, and so
the joys of fatherhood.
Yeah, and Lij is for urine, pee, and so I've been teaching those words. I don't know much Navajo, but the bit I'm trying to pass on.
Is it all bodily
bodily functions? Chant,
those are all the important ones.
Sit down, stop, no, lots of no.
I think maybe the important thing to take out of this whole conversation, though, is that we don't need to feel bad about feeling different.
Otherness.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we should accept that, embrace it, because that's who we are. You know what I mean?
It makes us special.
And for me, a lot of my life, I did feel weird. I didn't. You almost want to push that side of you away, because
Yeah.
Minimize
growing up in public school in the city, it's, like you said, you almost
Especially
want to
for
minimize
Indians
that.
like us, like we're very dark complected.
Yeah,
There are other Indians that are in our family who are extremely light complected, and they can pass.
Or like
and
our
they don't
cousin Josh, who
face,
looks Asian.
they don't face the same plight that we face. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
that's true.
And like they can either just pass for being, Hispanic or pass for being white, and that's fine. I'm not saying anything bad about that. But what I'm saying is that we have all faced the same
kind of struggles.
Yeah.
And I think like it's important for kids that are in that same area, or even parents that have kids that are going through that particular time from grade school, like just to acknowledge that and even have those conversations with them and be like, look, there's nothing wrong with this is our heritage,
Yeah.
be proud of it. I will say, my parents didn't talk about it a lot, and I think there was probably at some point my dad was like, I can't pursue the art road anymore. Like I have kids, I think I'm gonna have to get a job, and the responsibilities of being a parent, took over, and so I didn't see the art realm of growing up like you guys did. Even though my dad was becoming pretty prominent,
Yeah.
I
he
didn't
did
get to experience
sculptures that
that.
were
Yeah, he
beautiful.
did sculpting, a lot of sculpting, and I've seen some of his work, and man, it's good. It's
Yeah,
really good.
really good. See, you guys were a lot younger, but I remember going with our dads and our moms to go to stone quarries and like pull
Pulling-
alabaster
yeah.
out of the ground. Like that was cool,
Yeah.
being a little kid.
You got to do that.
Yeah, you guys weren't even
Like
born.
what a neat experience.
Yeah.
What if, so but like I didn't know that. You know what I mean? It's, when I grew up, like we didn't have that, and the only experience that I had with that was through your guys' family.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. Like it was really neat to be able to see. What your
It's
dad
hard
does,
though. Like every family is faced with the idea of like what you want to do versus the reality of the facts. You
Yeah.
know, and like if it got to a point to where I had to choose between feeding my family and the dream of being an artist, like it's feeding my family
Yeah.
every day. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I mean
So-
I don't. I'm not gonna say that my dad made the wrong choice or anything.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you. Like
Yeah.
he did what he had to do for us, and that's just part of being
Oh, yeah.
Being a parent and
a
an
parent.
adult.
Yeah. But growing up, like I really did wish that my family had more insight into our heritage, and that I knew, because I feel like a lot of the stuff I got was from your dad,
Well-
talking and telling stories,
We're in a very interesting position because we're multi-tribal.
Yeah.
So like, Grandpa Wendell, like he knew everything about Kiowas and he knew everything about being Taos Pueblo.
Yeah.
And so how do you choose what information you part to your next generation?
Right.
Even he is part two tribes, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the diversity starts. And like it's almost like we are like our own tribe of natives into our own. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
multi-tribal. Like that's nobody sets the qualifications for what is Indian.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
like-
the government does.
Well, because we give them that power. Though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. We don't have to acknowledge that.
I mean, the government, okay, so both of us are from the same parents.
Mm-hmm.
And you are technically registered as a Kiowa
Yes.
with the government. I am registered as a Navajo with the government. But we have the same parents, we have the same lineage, yet the only difference is that what the government sees. And
Well, even that, it's our own governments within, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the tribes, the way
And-
they're running things is, like you said, kind of like it's mirroring. A lot of them mirror the government, but yeah.
And I have a hard time with that onto its own. Like, I don't know why our tribal governments govern themselves like the federal government. that's not our heritage. And they want to have this resurgence of, oh, let's get back to being Indian. Well, why are you managing yourselves in a non-Indian way? Why are you governing yourselves in a non-Indian way? That's the problem in the first place, But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. We'll get into politics later, guys.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was a good discussion, and for all you kids out there. I don't know what. I don't know. What's the message for the kids, Ben? Or
I mean, the message is that otherness doesn't have to make you isn't a bad thing. That being an other or feeling your otherness is something that you should eventually try to. And I mean, especially with so much going on, so much happening on the internet, and with the resurgence of Native American identities and things like that, there are opportunities for you to investigate and learn more about yourself. And all it takes is some research and a desire to feel those things. Because, I mean, I know even as we've talked and like explained, like how much of an interaction with within our family we've had in education of who we are, we still feel other. And I honestly think that no matter your education in your family or how much you know about who you are and your lineage, you will ultimately feel other. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. All right, guys.
All right.
Hey, we got a lot more topics to talk about upcoming, so stay tuned. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks
Again,
for listening,
this is Off the Reservation.
Off the Reservation.
Off the Reservation. Off the Reservation.
Off the Reservation.
We'll see you guys.